Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live on the spirit of well-being in the city of Palmdale. My name is JJ Murphy, and we'll introduce ourselves.
My name is Nardi Lopez.
Good morning, my name is Alloro.
And we're here today to go over the report, to thank people for filling out the survey. We got great information, and we're going to go over the details of this information here in a couple minutes at the top of the hour. But we are very blessed to have Louis here and to try to help us formally go through a community well-being program. And this survey showed great results, but it set a benchmark for us to improve on.
For sure. Looking forward to sharing the findings of the report as we get started this morning. And we did find some promising results in Antelope Valley. So as people get on here, we just encourage you to get comfortable, and we'll share the results of the report and talk about how people can be involved in our partnership to build a well-being coalition here in Antelope Valley.
Yes, I was going to transition to that next with Nardi and mention that we've been getting good applications. A lot of people seem to be interested. There's still opportunity to apply. What's the deadline, or we're going to cover that later? Or?
We will be covering more about the application process, but yes, the applications are still open. I believe that we have shared the links to both to the survey, because the survey is still open as well, and people can still submit their surveys. In addition to that, the application for the CAP program and the report as well. The report that Louis is going to be reporting on today and sharing information on is also available via the links that we have shared.
Okay, so with that, I think we'll kick this off. And very excited to be here at our Facebook Live event on well-being. We've done basic introductions. This past year has brought some of the toughest circumstances, not just the Antelope Valley, our country has faced. COVID-19, racial and political unrest, the change of administrations, a polarized political system. But with the economic development stimulus packages rolling out, there's cautious optimism that we can address some of the current mental health issues going on in our community, try to get kids more active, and just offer more programs. We certainly have some homeless challenges here, but I believe looking forward, being forward-thinking, and trying to be positive, that there's a bright light off on the horizon that we can move toward.
Yes. We've had some challenging times, and we are going to be sharing, Lois is going to be sharing, as we said, the information about our initial study. And the study specifically focused on people living in the Antelope Valley. It focused on the well-being, functioning in the local community, including 503 Antelope Valley residents, representative of age, of ethnicity, income, and work status. But it's skewed more heavily towards women and is not representative by location. So Lois will be sharing this information. We shared this study on social media, on local billboards, and with the help of market research company who helped us find survey participants in the Antelope Valley Mall. The Wellbeing survey is still open, as we mentioned, and it can be accessed at cityofpalmdale.org/survey. We also have, as we said, Louis Alloro. He's a scholar practitioner with the Wellbeing Lab who researches the application of positive psychology in community and organizational leadership development. Louis is teaching the certificate in applied positive psychology class, which is called the CAP, and it begins in a few weeks here in the Antelope Valley, and the applications are still open, and Louis will share more information about that.
So before we start, Louis, already the survey was pushed out, and it was great to see that it was not just Palmdale residents. About 64% of all the respondents were from Palmdale, but the Antelope Valley really put their voice into this, and it was great. So I appreciate both of you to push it out, the message. So just kick this off, Louis, before you get into the findings. Why is well-being important? Let's start with a simple definition. And what does well-being mean?
It's a really good question. What is well-being? I think you see the word and you kind of know what that means, right? You feel it in your body maybe a little bit, what being well actually means. It means a lot of things, JJ. It means not just one thing, but taken together, well-being is the ability to feel good and function effectively in your life. At home, at work, at every place in between. So well-being has something to do with physical health, has something to do with mental health, has something to do with relational health and having good relationships in your life. It has something to do with your engagement in the world. It has something to do with your work, but not just your work. It has something to do with your spiritual life. It has something to do with your volunteerism, your showing up for your community. So well-being is something that impacts all of us. It's something that ebbs and flows. It doesn't stay the same all of the time. And so we're curious at the Wellbeing Lab to think about the state of well-being in a place like Antelope Valley across two dimensions. We measure well-being, we ask questions about your levels of thriving and your levels of struggle. So we look at well-being multidimensionally. You can have struggle in your life, and we all have this past year. I have this past year, I'll speak for myself. And how you show up to that struggle, right, is really what well-being allows us to do. We say well-being inspires well-doing. So in the Antelope Valley, what we found across those two dimensions were about 20% of the respondents, this is really a good finding, are consistently thriving. So of the 500 people that we surveyed, about 20% of them would end up in that quadrant that we call consistently thriving. That is, they have high thriving and low struggles, so to speak. We found that 31% of the respondents were not feeling bad, just getting by. People who are kind of okay. People who, perhaps with some tools and strategies, some skills and strengths, are people who can move into a quadrant we call living well despite struggle. So we found about 40% of the respondents in this survey are living well despite struggles, and we'd like to get some more people into that quadrant. It's not that we have to get everyone into this space of feeling good and being well all the time, consistently thriving. We can help people show up to the challenges of life, the uncertainties of life, stronger, more resilient, with a greater capacity.
Can you explain to the public that when you're taking this survey, it's kind of a snapshot in time, that you can go through all the levels and all the quadrants, but the survey is asking you, how do you feel at a certain point in time? And our end goal, right, is to move the needle in our community, so that we're not just saying that some of the people who respond that never have bad days. We all have bad days, but on a steady state. Can you talk about that? I mean, we've talked at lunch about it, but can you maybe just clarify that this is there are people who the 20%, even some of those 20% have bad days where they may thrive despite struggle, but overall they feel like they were doing well.
Yeah. So this is a snapshot in time, like you said. This survey. When you sit down to take the survey, you're influenced by so many things, right? How you slept the night before, what's going on at work that day, the quality of interactions you may have had that day with a kid at home, maybe. So much, a global pandemic certainly impacts how you would respond. So it is all, like I said earlier, well-being is something that ebbs and flows. And so it's not necessarily something that you're born with. There is a skill set that comes with being well in the world, and that's what we help people learn is some of the things, some of the strategies that science shows and ancient wisdom, for that matter, can support, the efficacy of getting a good meal, a very nutritious meal, having good connections with your loved ones, and even with people you don't know, your loose ties, having good connections with your neighbors, deepening some of those relationships, things that we know contribute to more well-being. What we found in this sample is a particular section of the Antelope Valley community, the Latinx Hispanic community, more likely to report living well despite struggles than we've seen in some other communities that we've studied. So, I think that says something about a beautiful part of this community, which comes with traditions and customs, perhaps, that help people be well.
Yes, and that is the Latinx community. And I can say that, yes, Louis, culture, I think, contributes to that. I believe, I am Hispanic myself, and so I know that growing up, my surroundings, when I came here to California, I lived in an area where there was, Hispanics from different nationalities, right? Mexico, Puerto Rico, El Salvador, et cetera, and so now that I think about this and I looked at the report, yes, you know what, there were struggles and hardships, and thinking about the different families that lived in the same building that my family lived, despite those struggles, despite the economic hardships, despite all that, we felt well, like we were doing good. You felt happy, and you saw the families, always seeking the positive side of things. And so it was good to see this report and see that, in the Antelope Valley, that was something that is, that exists. And it was good to see that. But what did we see in other populations in this report?
Yeah, so what we saw in some other populations, we saw white and black people significantly more likely to report that they were consistently thriving. We saw some other populations that were more likely to report really struggling. For example, some people who don't have a college education, or people who are struggling to find work, or people who are living in households making less than $50,000. Of course, you would expect there to be some more struggling in these places where people are, trying to get by day to day. And so that makes sometimes even getting a good night's sleep challenging, right? When you're working 2 jobs or you're working overnight, it makes struggle that much more likely. So we like to remind people that life is about struggle. Sometimes we have to learn how to show up to that struggle. It's not about getting rid of it altogether, but about managing it, navigating it, I like to say a lot, and just being open to trying things differently where you can.
What did the results come back on our youth?
So what we found in the survey, that upper adolescence, we call that 18 to 24, upper adolescence, which was the youngest age group that we studied in this report, so we didn't study anyone younger. But we found that they were significantly more likely to report really struggling people in this 18 to 24 category. We found them, when we measured well-being factors, we found them lower in things like positive emotion, things like engagement, things like achievement. And so this finding is consistent with what we have found in some other populations, 18 to 24-year-olds really struggling. Certainly this past year with the pandemic, but I would venture to guess even before the pandemic, right? So I think it's just something that in our work together, building the Wellbeing Coalition in the Antelope Valley and in proceeding with the certificate in applied positive psychology this year, we're going to take that on, right, as a coalition, is to be more curious about that. What's going on for 18 to 24-year-olds, and how can we better support them?
Right. I'm excited about that class. People I talked to, I was just at the chamber luncheon last week. They're very interested in the CAP class. I think it's going to be. I think you're going to see a diverse group who are willing to roll up their sleeves and make a difference in this community and put the effort in to make a positive difference. But caring for well-being is not a solo endeavor, and it's very complex. Can you touch on that?
I can touch on that. Yeah, it is not a solo endeavor, right? We are social creatures, human beings. One of my former professors says that we're like termites. we travel together as human beings, like ants, right? You see ants, try to minimize them in your kitchen, and then you see how really well ants travel together in packs. Humans are similar, so our perceptions, our experiences, our behaviors are shaped by things going on within me, my personality, my skill sets, things going on between us in our relationships, and then larger factors, things that are like access to resources, for example, things that we put as external factors. So let's start with the intrapersonal first, JJ. The stuff that's going on within me. We found that 54% of respondents in this survey reported that they have high ability to care for their well-being. So 54%, that's pretty good. Over half of the respondents saying that they have the knowledge, they have the tools, they have the skill sets. We found that 53%, almost 53%, reported high motivation, right? Because you could have the skills, but not the drive, right? So it's the both and. So we found greater than half of the respondents, but that's still half the respondents that report low skills and low motivation. So there's some work that we can do there as a coalition to build the skill sets, build the motivation. We found that almost half, about 47%, reported having a safe space to talk about their well-being, to talk about what's working, where they might be struggling. We call this psychological safety. You've heard of physical safety, right? You know what it feels like when that's jeopardized. For example, if you're sleeping and you hear a large a sound outside, unexpected, right? Your physical safety is jeopardized. Psychological safety is something that's more on the inside, right? It's something that you experience, and it's a phenomenon between people. Psychological safety. Do we have enough safety to show up for each other in good times and in bad times? And so that becomes an important thing to have in community well-being, organizational well-being, is to have that psychological safety. Then if you go to interpersonal factors, right, the other things that are important in relationship, we asked people where they belonged, for example. We found that most of the respondents, almost 25%, said with their families they feel a sense of belonging. We found that at work, we found that about 10% of the respondents felt like they belonged at work. Given that we spend most of our time at work, a lot of time at work, if we're privileged to have jobs, that can be increased, right? That we can create more cultures of belonging where people feel a sense of affiliation, a sense of identity, a sense of real belonging at this place. We found that 43% of the respondents in Antelope Valley said they belonged in only one place. Yet we found that people who said they belonged to 3 or more places were more likely to be thriving. So for those of you who are listening, I just invite you to think of, where do you find a sense of belonging? Do you have a church or a mosque or a temple that you belong to? Do you have a sporting club or a gym that you go to, like a CrossFit box, or even a group of neighbors that you could walk with in your community, right? All of these things can create senses of belonging. So we found that 3 out of every 10 residents felt it was best to keep their struggles to themselves. This number is, around what we find in other communities as well. We'd like to increase that, right? We'd like more people to feel like they can talk about what's going on with them. When you're able to share what's going on with you, you're not withholding things that are important to you. When we withhold anything, when we withhold emotions, when we withhold communications, when we withhold, that's not kind of moving things through us. And so we want to encourage people that it's okay and it's safe to talk about things. Now, I know you guys have done this past year, right?
We have, and we've had mental health town halls, and I'm hoping, now that we're measuring this, that people are comfortable with the conversation around mental health. And I think bringing this program forward and training people in certificate in applied positive psychology will get more and more people that you're become comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and make mental health and conversations around it not scary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, how we can hold space for each other as human beings, right? To make it okay to talk about all of it, the good times, the triumphs, and the struggles.
Mm-hmm. We run a lot of our mental health town halls in this room,
mm-hmm.
right? And we might have a veteran focus or a homeless focus, and we bring agency experts in here, and you get motivated to hear the impact they're able to make, or to talk about things that could make a positive impact. And I'm proud that this city and the mayor and city council are putting real money behind the effort. We're not just waiting on outside agencies to address this issue. We're taking an active role in mental health and homelessness, and I think this program should, if 30% is the benchmark of people talking about mental health now feeling comfortable, I can't wait a year from now where this community lies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you say, there are good agencies out there. There are good people. There are good programs out there. What we're hoping with this coalition is to coordinate them a little bit more from a central place, so that we can be in better unison with each other, right? Because sometimes we've talked about the silos that exist right now already, sometimes between people and programs, agencies.
Yes, and that it's interesting how you reported that, was it 10%, right, of people feel, based on this report, that they feel that they can, a sense of belonging at work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we do spend more time at work than we do at home or anywhere else sometimes. And so, there's a factor across these findings that is sometimes that it's overlooked, right? But it's common, and that's the need that is our driving need as human beings for quality connections with others.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has a big factor on our well-being, right? Because this includes the need for a sense of belonging and psychological safety, high quality relationships with others, family, friends, groups, and neighbors, and the external supports that care for the unique needs that people have. And so that makes me think, right, that the importance of the connections, right? And we have so many organizations here in our community that are serving the public and the needs, right, and those resources that are needed. And I have to say, when I was working on the census outreach efforts for the census count, I worked along many organizations here and nonprofits that were all seeking, right, to help contribute to getting, people to be counted in the census, etc. And we realized that a lot of these organizations, some don't know each other. They don't know what services, they're providing. And so there could be a united effort here in regards to uniting their services, right? Working together, collaborating together. And that all contributes, right, to the well-being of their own nonprofits, of their audience, themselves, etc. So can you tell us more about this, Louis?
Yeah. So I like what you're saying, that, that internally those agencies can strengthen, and then like thinking about the reach that we have in the community can be even greater. We asked people in the survey, what were the greatest supports, external supports that the community provides in terms of well-being? Most people said other. When looking at the categories that we had almost 25% of the respondents say other. We had some people report well-being information and tools was helpful, mental health supports were helpful, opportunities to connect were also helpful. So I'm curious about that other, right? Something that the coalition can actually go out and dig a little deeper around. What are the particular supports? And maybe those of you listening can pop in the chat, where do you see well-being supports being helpful in the community? We did find, when we asked about well-being support information and tools, that older respondents reported that those were more helpful than younger respondents. So again, to that population, 18 to 24, how can we reach them in a way that's impactful, positively impactful in their lives?
I think that leads us to positive impact, boosting and thriving. How do we get there? How do we get there? Well, our strategy right now, as you know, is to call together 50 stakeholders in the Antelope Valley to participate in our Certificate in Applied Positive Psychology program. It's a well-being lab offering that really helps people understand the science of human well-being for themselves personally, what they can do to increase their own well-being, how they could bring that to their relationships. So then, relationally, how do we apply what we're learning on our teams, in our families, in our professional and personal circles? And then finally, on an organizational or community-wide level, we're looking at some of the opportunities to heighten the programs that exist and the people that are working on these programs, and to find the gaps. Where are there opportunities that Antelope Valley can be doing better when it comes to helping people care for their well-being? So really, one step at a time is the short answer to that question. Thinking about how we can improve our own leadership. Even us sitting at this table, we're all participating in the Certificate in Applied Positive Psychology class because no one's really exempt from doing that work, to dig a little deeper, to reach a little higher. And together, we are more powerful than any one of us alone in how we then bring what we're learning back into the community. So it's a process, not a problem. I learned that last week. We don't have problems, we have processes. And the process here is to do some learning together, cohort style, and then let that vision emerge from the group. I'm definitely looking forward to connect the various groups and agencies, as we move forward. I think I think this community is looking forward to it. You know, the conversations we've had, I think are going to lead to that connectivity that's needed to increase well-being.
Yes, I truly believe that our community has some motivation. We have a lot of, motivated, I could say public servants, right? They're seeking to provide resources in the community and unite. And I think this is a wonderful and very strong start, right, to unity in efforts of well-being, improving the well-being in our community. And we've heard, right, the needs through our mental town halls, through this challenging year that we have lived, and very excited that the city has launched this, and very excited about the applications that are coming in and how people are seeking to be part of this program, and looking forward to that. I know that the report also provided some input, right? We had a 64.8% of Antelope Valley residents that reported feeling worried, right, or anxious about the economy. We had 42.2 that felt worried or anxious about losing their jobs. So, Louis, can you tell us more about some of that?
Yeah, I mean, anxiety is real, right? Stress and anxiety, uncertainty does that to any human being. So of course we have that here as well. One of the questions I see on the Facebook Live: will there be any real life experience in this program? Yes, 100% real life experience, because what we are learning in this program are, for example, ways to identify anxiety, work with anxiety, work through anxiety, because what we do without having this skill set, Nardi, is we just sit with it, right, and internalize it, and it grows, right? We're not working through it. So we are having opportunities in this program to apply the strategies. A lot of those resilience, anxiety, working with anxiety strategies come from a lot of research done for the past 50 years even in cognitive behavioral therapies and other modalities that have been that have a good evidence base to them, that these things work in helping people show up to some of life stuff that happens outside of our control. So yes, that was Laura's question. Yes to that. There are so many ways to apply what you're learning in real life, in real context, so that this is not a theoretical exercise. This is an exercise in understanding some of the theories, some of the science, but in applying it. So that's why we call it a certificate in applied positive psychology, because it is all about application. Again, for yourself, for your relationships, and then for larger scale types of interventions that we'll co-create in the community, and for you organizational leaders out there, for your teams, for the health and vitality of your workplace. That's why this is a great program for people in workplaces who take on human resources or people leadership, things that really impact people.
And we may then apply it, right, outside of the CAP program. And we have that skill to continue growing the coalition, and with more and more members that, will gain these skills and trickle like a waterfall, so that the community's well-being improves, and we can discuss, right, those real-life challenges that we face every day.
So people can download the report and look at all of the findings. We have a beautiful report here that you can access a PDF of, or they could stop by the City Hall and they could pick up a copy, a printed copy. And so that's cityofpalmdale.org/report if you're interested to see all of the findings. Also, people who want to take the survey, you want to tell them about where they could do that, Nardi?
Yes, they can access the survey on our city website. It's cityofpalmdale.org/survey. Both the report, the survey, and also the application for the CAP program are all available on the city website. We are still accepting applications. We encourage people to apply. If you have any questions, you can contact us here at the city. You can contact me directly at 661-267-5177 for any additional questions. We have a lot of information to share. If there's any group or organization that would like for Lewis to provide information to their group or team, we can arrange for that as well. If they like, more information on the report or about the CAP program, we can coordinate that as well. So you can reach out to me for that as well.
What work teams might consider doing is adopting. We have a workplace version of this PERMA Wellbeing survey, and so we always say what we measure, we manage. What we measure, we manage. So that's why it's important to measure well-being, so that we can spark these kinds of conversations and we can give people tools. And so even when people go and take the survey themselves, what you'll get is a really nice customized report for individuals. And it's an intervention in and of itself. So I really encourage people to go and take the assessment that Nardi just mentioned, cityofpalmdale.org/survey.
Well, I will tell you, Louis, thank you. Thank you for investing your time in Palmdale. Nardi, thank you for help pulling all this together. And community, thank you for taking your time to listen to us today. We all have to be in this together. We can't improve our community with a snap of a finger. We have to invest the time. We have to invest in each other. You talked about relationships, so hopefully this program, these results will help us get there.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to take the time to thank everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Do you have any closing comments?
Thank you all for listening in today. I think my closing comment would be to stay curious. Stay curious about these findings, what's missing from these findings, what you would add, what other questions you think would add to this conversation. Their inquiry is one of the biggest markers of well-being in a system, on a team, in a family even. So pop your questions into the chat here and we'll continue to answer them, and stay curious is my final.
All right.
Final.
All right. Stay curious, Antelope Valley. Thank you very much.
Thank you.